It was nearly midnight. The offices on the 34th floor were silent, except for the faint hum of fluorescent lights and the rhythmic squeak of rubber soles against polished tile. A man in his 60s pushed a janitor's cart down the hallway, a faded baseball cap pulled low over his brow. He moved slowly, methodically, like someone who had done this 1,000 times before. But there was something different about him. Something in the way he glanced at the corner office, the one with the skyline view. That office used to be his. Just 5 years earlier, Jack Ryland was a millionaire. Self-made, admired, feared in boardrooms, and praised in business magazines. He didn't just work in that building. He owned a controlling share of the company that leased it. But now, he cleaned the coffee stains off desks where interns half his age sat during the day. So what happened? It wasn't drugs or gambling or wild parties. It was one decision, one investment, one moment of misplaced trust. And it cost him everything. Before we dive in, ask yourself, how secure is your wealth, really? Because Jack's story isn't just about money. It's a cautionary tale about how fast life can change. Back-end index pointing right if you're on a journey to build wealth or trying to protect what you've earned. Don't miss what's coming next. Hit like, subscribe, and stick around till the end. The story you're about to hear might just save your financial future. Long before Jack Ryland became the man with a mop and a janitor's badge, he was the man with the plan. Born in a modest town outside of Pittsburgh, Jack's beginnings were anything but glamorous. His father was a steel mill worker, his mother, a schoolteacher. Money was tight, but the values were rich: discipline, integrity, and the belief that hard work could change your life. Jack didn't go to an Ivy League school. He couldn't afford to. Instead, he studied business at a local community college while juggling 2 part-time jobs. One at a gas station, the other delivering newspapers at dawn. He wasn't the smartest guy in the room, but he was always the hardest worker. And in the early 2000s, that grit paid off. Jack started a small logistics company out of his garage with a single used truck and a laptop from a pawn shop. He called it Ryland Freight Solutions. Humble beginnings, but he had a sharp eye for inefficiencies in the shipping industry and a gift for negotiation. Within 5 years, his fleet had grown from 1 truck to 30. By year 10, he had contracts with major retailers and had expanded across 3 states. Investors took notice. So did Forbes. By age 52, Jack had built an empire. His net worth was estimated at over $12 million. He bought a lake house in Vermont, sent his kids to private school, and finally took his wife to Paris, the trip they always dreamed about. But Jack wasn't just rich. He was respected. Employees called him Boss Jack, not out of obligation, but out of loyalty. He paid fair, listened often, and never forgot where he came from. He had it all, until the day an offer came across his desk that promised even more. It was a crisp Monday morning when the email landed in Jack's inbox. Subject line: exclusive opportunity, early access for preferred investors only. At first glance, it looked like spam, but it wasn't. The sender was someone Jack knew, someone he trusted. Cameron Lyle, a slick-talking venture capitalist from New York who had once been a junior analyst at a firm Jack partnered with. They'd met over dinner at a conference years ago, bonded over scotch and stories about their scrappy beginnings. Since then, Cameron had climbed fast, too fast, some said. He was now managing a tech startup fund that promised high returns in emerging markets. Artificial intelligence, smart logistics, the future of shipping, he called it. Jack was intrigued. They met in Manhattan a week later. Cameron's pitch was polished, seductive. He showed Jack a sleek presentation with charts that only went up, buzzwords that made it sound like Amazon and Tesla had a baby, and promises of exclusive pre-IPO shares. The startup? QuantShip AI, a company claiming to revolutionize freight using predictive analytics and autonomous routing. Jack wasn't impulsive. He did his homework. He had his legal team scan the documents. Everything looked legit, but something inside him hesitated. This wasn't his usual style. He built his empire slow and solid. Not on hype, but on substance. Still, the world was changing. Fast. And Jack didn't want to be left behind. So against his gut instinct, he wired $5 million, nearly half his net worth, into the venture. Cameron called him a visionary. Jack felt like a pioneer. But behind the glossy pitch decks and the charming emails, a different story was unfolding. One Jack wouldn't discover until it was too late. At first, everything seemed perfect. Jack received monthly investor updates, slick PDF reports, glowing progress summaries, and stage photos of servers humming in a sterile warehouse. The team looked young, hungry, and determined. Cameron even hosted quarterly Zoom calls, where he spoke with confidence and used words like scalability, acquisition pipeline, and next-gen disruption so effortlessly, you'd think he invented them. Jack watched as others piled in. Celebrity investors, a few hedge funds, even a tech YouTuber who raved about QuantShip AI's insane potential. For a moment, Jack breathed easier. He felt smart, cutting edge, ahead of the curve. But then, the silence began. The March update was late. When it finally arrived, it was a short email. No charts, no projections. Just vague language about unforeseen delays and a temporary adjustment in strategy. Jack emailed Cameron. No reply. He called. Voicemail. Then came the headlines. A whistleblower post on a tech blog claimed that QuantShip's AI wasn't functional. It was a simulation. A glorified slideshow posing as innovation. Jack's chest tightened. He picked up the phone again. Still no answer. And then, one night, while scrolling through social media, he saw it. QuantShip AI CEO resigns amid fraud allegations. Investors in panic. He felt cold, not just from fear, but from a realization that hit harder than any market crash. He'd ignored his instincts. He'd let FOMO cloud his judgment. He'd bet on a promise and lost. Jack rushed to his financial advisor, hoping to salvage something, anything. But the paperwork was airtight, the money gone, and the startup on the brink of collapse. His empire, built brick by brick over 25 years, was now crumbling. He didn't just lose the money. He lost the trust of his board, his investors, and worst of all, himself. Jack Ryland had always prided himself on resilience. He had weathered recessions, lawsuits, and hostile takeovers. But nothing prepared him for this. QuantShip AI collapsed within 6 months. Investigations revealed that the company's product was mostly vaporware, brilliant marketing built on a shaky prototype and overhyped forecasts. Cameron disappeared from the public eye. Lawsuits piled up, but with little to recover, most investors saw nothing back, including Jack. His $5 million investment? Gone. But the damage didn't stop there. His company's board, already uneasy with his aggressive, visionary investments, called an emergency meeting. They voted him out as chairman. Within weeks, Jack was stripped of his executive power. His shares plummeted. Clients pulled out. Then came the personal fallout. His wife, already weary from Jack's obsession with work, moved out, taking their daughter with her. The house they once filled with laughter and catered parties now echoed with emptiness. Jack tried to hold on. He downsized, sold off assets, and burned through what remained of his savings trying to settle legal fees and debts. But it wasn't enough. The man who once negotiated billion-dollar deals was soon negotiating with landlords over rent extensions. In one gray November morning, Jack walked into a custodial staffing agency, not as a partner, but as an applicant. The irony was sharp. The office where he now worked nights had once welcomed him as a keynote speaker. A decade earlier, he'd stood behind that podium, delivering a TED-style talk on visionary leadership. Now, he cleaned its floors. But strangely, in that silence, something shifted. Jack didn't pity himself. Not anymore. He was tired, yes, but no longer pretending. The fall had stripped him of everything: his wealth, his power, his image. What remained was clarity. It wasn't an overnight comeback. Jack Ryland's redemption didn't come with a winning lottery ticket or a sudden buyout. It came slowly, in quiet, deliberate steps. After the fall, Jack did something he hadn't done in decades. He listened. He started attending free seminars at the local library, this time not as a guest speaker, but as a student. He learned from young financial coaches, humble real estate investors, and people who were building wealth the slow, boring way, without shortcuts, without hype. He read books on behavioral finance, researched Warren Buffett's investing philosophy, and slowly, Piece by piece, he rebuilt his mindset. Jack took on small consulting jobs. Nothing glamorous, just helping struggling startups avoid the same mistakes he made. And this time, he didn't chase unicorns. He prioritized companies with boring business models and strong fundamentals. Then, he began documenting his story. He started a blog anonymously, The Janitor's Notebook, sharing what he learned, not as a guru, but as someone who had been humbled by the system. To his surprise, the blog gained traction. His raw honesty resonated. People want to know how someone could go from a penthouse office to pushing a mop and still find meaning. Eventually, Jack published a book, Swept Away, How I Lost Millions and Found Myself. It wasn't a bestseller, but it didn't need to be. It paid the bills. And more importantly, it helped others. He now lived in a modest apartment, drove a used car, and lived off a modest passive income stream from consulting and digital products. But he was free. No more boardrooms. No more masks. Just Jack. And if you asked him today if he'd do anything differently, he'd pause, then smile. I wouldn't wish what happened to me on anyone, he'd say, but I wouldn't trade the clarity I have now for all the millions I lost, because I finally understand what wealth really is. Jack Ryland's story is a brutal but necessary reminder. It's not about how much you make, but how wisely you manage it. No amount of money can protect you from a bad decision, inflated ego, or blind trust. So if you're building wealth, remember, be cautious, be curious, and above all, stay humble. Because sometimes the most expensive lessons come wrapped in success. If Jack's story moved you, imagine how many lives you could impact by sharing it. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment. What's the biggest money lesson you've learned the hard way? Your story could help someone else avoid a costly mistake. Until next time, keep building smart and stay grounded.